Hello, everyone. This is Sarup Paul. Thanks again for joining us in this webinar series that we are doing on Knowledge V3. Today, we will be doing a deep dive on user criteria, which we introduced with Knowledge V3. We'll also do a quick rundown of Knowledge V3 that we covered in depth in our last webinar about a couple of weeks back. We received some amazing feedback from you guys, over 600 views. So really appreciate you guys, reading our content, and we'll continue to do this outreach so that you can get all the help you need as you are moving to your Knowledge V3 migration. With me today, I have Eyal Arasu. He is the development lead for Knowledge at ServiceNow. And in today's session, we will be covering, as I mentioned, what the new features are in Knowledge V3, and then we'll dive into the user criteria. We'll also give you guys a sneak peek as to what we plan to do in our next session. So what is Knowledge V3? Typically we do incremental upgrades with every release, but with Fuji, we did some major changes, so much so that we call ourselves Knowledge Management V3 with that application and onwards. The changes are automated and also mandatory, so when you go through the upgrade, you don't need to do anything. However, it is important to understand these changes prior to the upgrade. These changes come with new features, so you can leverage the capabilities in the platform, and also understanding the new features help you in providing a smooth transition for your users. So what did we add in Knowledge V3? So if you're moving to Fuji or Geneva from a version that is prior to Fuji, you will get migrated to Knowledge V3. With Fuji, we added a bunch of changes. The highlights of these are mentioned here. Initially, with Knowledge V2, you had one single knowledge base that was shared across multiple departments, and then ownership of the content was spread out between different groups, and it was a challenge for our users to manage the ownership of the content. So we have introduced multiple knowledge bases with Fuji, and each knowledge base has its own set of owners and admins. We also have separate configurable workflows for each knowledge base, which allows each department that is managing their own knowledge base to have their own unique way of managing their approval processes. Each knowledge base also has a multi-level category hierarchy, which replaces the old two-level topic/category hierarchy tree that we had. And as you know, categories are used to classify the content, which helps later in the knowledge search and browse features. The highlight of the webinar today is user criteria, which was also introduced with Fuji. We'll cover that in depth in the later slides. With Geneva, we introduced two more features. One is social Q&A. Social Q&A is a way to crowdsource your knowledge and allow your users to contribute, your end users to contribute to the knowledge base in the means of questions and answers. It is a way to augment your self-service strategy, and all the content that is contributed via social Q&A is searchable, which even helps in decentralizing the content processes that you have in your organization. We also added the capability to import from Microsoft Word with Geneva, We covered that as well in our previous webinar. And all that it allows you is to drag and drop a Word document to the knowledge homepage, and then you can import that into as an article. What we did not mention in our last webinar was the fact that this feature also allows you to import content in bulk. So you can select a number of documents. We have tested with 100 documents, and that creates new articles in the knowledge base. It's a very effective means of migrating legacy content into your knowledge base. So that's what we added in Knowledge V3. We will continue to add more features as we go through multiple releases and then improve the knowledge base capabilities. So what's important to know when you are doing your Knowledge V3 upgrade? As I mentioned, that some of the changes are automatic. So you may ask, if you have new multiple knowledge bases, what happens to my legacy content? All the legacy content is actually migrated to one single knowledge base called as knowledge. We also call that as the V2 knowledge in the V3 knowledge base environment, but that's the legacy content. Typically, you would migrate your content from that knowledge base into your new knowledge bases as you take on the capabilities of the new application. We also have a new article view page, KB_view, and all your legacy customizations to KB_view are moved to a new page called as KB_view_customer. So that change also happens automatically. One more thing to notice is with Knowledge V3, we move to Angular, and that means that some of the older browsers, namely this impacts Internet Explorer, they do not support Angular. So there is a launcher page that actually redirects requests when they're made from older browsers to the V2 pages, the V2 home page and the V2 article pages. As you do your migration, there are a few best practices that we would like to recommend. Plan your knowledge base structure, from moving from one single knowledge base to multiple knowledge bases, and then how you want to do the shared versus restricted knowledge bases for internal use versus your end customer use. It will help you to plan how the content that you have today or the new content that you're going to create is going to be structured. So plan it out. User criterias is the new means of controlling permissions to the knowledge base and the content. So which is replacing ACLs. We'll cover this in greater detail, but that's something that you want to plan for as well. Categories, we move from the two-level topic / category to the multi-level category tree. It helps to not have a lot of levels. Usually 4 or 5 levels is considered too much for your users because they lose interest as they're going into the tree. But and we recommend up to 2 to 3 levels. However, the tool would support as many levels you would need for your organizational structure. Also, if you require to implement article level security, you can use roles or business rules. This will be more relevant as we go through the later slides. One of the things that we would like to recommend you to read for your upgrade is a blog that we wrote about migration from Knowledge V2 to V3. I'll just flash this up for a minute. Sorry about that. So this is called as All Things Upgrade Considered from Knowledge V2 to V3. It's on our blog, and this highlights a lot of the changes that are happening during the migration, what's new, what's to be considered as you go through the upgrade. So it's a very good primer on Knowledge V3. So recommend you to read through this. All right, moving on to the highlight of this session, user criteria. We'll do a deep dive on this. So why user criteria? Knowledge V2 had For article access control, we use roles and groups, and most of this was configured by the admin. So if you had to have a new role or a new group, you would have to go to your admin and do that. Our motivation for using user criteria was to move the power to the knowledge owners and the knowledge managers, and user criteria enables you to do that without requiring admin assistance. User criteria actually broadens your capability to do the segmentation of your users. You can do it based upon users, groups, roles, departments, and locations, as you can see from the screenshot below, and gives you a level of granularity and segmentation that was not available earlier, or was not available to be configured as easily earlier. Once you configure all these, you have a match all button. If you want to make it a more restrictive access and match all the various attributes, then you would want to select that. Once you have created the user criteria and created the segmentation, then you can apply those user criteria for various permissions within the knowledge base, and it is applied at the knowledge base level. As you can see from the screenshot here, you can configure who can read, who cannot read, who can contribute, and who cannot contribute. And you can apply your user criteria to these various permissions so that you can control the access and the audience to your knowledge base. Now you may ask, how is all this evaluated? So what typically happens during the evaluation process, and this applies for both read and contribute, is first your role is evaluated in terms of the environment. So if you are an admin, knowledge base owner, or the knowledge base manager, then you have access to all the articles. Then we check the cannot permissions. So if you do not have permissions, then the can permissions will not be evaluated. So first cannot, then can, and that's how it is evaluated. So how does this set up into the real world? So what we did was, you can evaluate user criteria based upon different use cases and how they are configured: can't contribute, can contribute, can't read, and can read. How are they evaluated? So we published this article, the wiki, which has a bunch of these details, and as and when you apply user criteria on your knowledge base, and depending how you configure, you can see how the roles and permissions would take into effect. So this is available as a PDF, and as you can see, it's pretty exhaustive about how the user criteria is evaluated based upon how it is configured under each of the permission set. So how do you migrate your ACLs to user criteria? First of all, if you have not customized your ACLs, no change is required. If it is out of the box, user criteria, once you apply them, there will not be any change required. If you have customized, you should take inventory. You should take inventory of the ACLs that have been implemented at the article level, and the roles that have been implemented at the article level. You should also take inventory of the ACLs at the KB_knowledge levels for create, read, and write. Typically, you would want to map all your ACLs to user criteria based on user attributes such as department, location, group, and roles as well. If you are using the current context, then you would need to go and configure based upon article level roles and business rules. We actually wrote a blog that has details about this particular setup when you're using current, and we would like you to read through this, and I'll give you a understanding as well. So out of the box in Knowledge V3, the roles field is disabled. So the first thing that you want to do, if you want to implement article security at the article level, is to enable the roles field on your knowledge article form. Once you have done that, then you can enable your roles at the article level so that you can control the access. There is also you can also use business rules for filtering. So you are applying, let's say, location or product or other parameters at the user criteria level, which applies at the knowledge base level. However, within a knowledge base for each article, if you want to do further granularity in your access based on users' attributes, so if a user is in a particular region, then a particular article within the same knowledge base should be available to them, whereas not available to another region. When you're doing that kind of a use case, then you need to use business rules. And typically what you would use is, what you would do is configure the knowledge article to have those attributes that would map to the user, and then you would implement before query business rules that actually restrict the access based upon a very simple script which matches the user's attribute to the attribute on the knowledge article. So that's how you would do article level security based upon advanced conditions. And we recommend, if you have that kind of a use case, then you read through this blog that we wrote about this particular use case. So where is user criteria applied? So we do get these questions a lot. What you need to know is that article view page, KB_view, honors both user criteria as well as ACLs. However, knowledge v3 search evaluates only based on user criteria. So if you really want to control your your user access on $knowledge.do, then you want to do you would want to use user criteria as much as possible for your knowledge articles. On v3 homepage, which is also $knowledge.do, you see a couple of buttons called as create new article and import. Now we do get questions on that, is how can you restrict those buttons to be available to users. What is important to know here is that user criteria, if you have defined a user criteria for can contribute on at least one of your knowledge bases, and that user criteria matches with the logged in user, then create new article and import will both show. If you don't want a particular set of users to have access to these features, then you would need to remove their users being under a particular user criteria so that they don't get those features. With knowledge v3 with Geneva, actually, we also have social Q&A. Now, social Q&A, the first thing is, if you're not ready for social Q&A, then do not enable it. By default, it's disabled. But if you have enabled it, what's important to know is that if you have enabled can read and a user criteria matches with can read, then that particular user will be able to create and answer questions. Now remember, this is not the same as articles. User criteria for can read applies for social Q&A because this is meant for end users. Anybody who can access the knowledge base is actually also entitled to participate in the social Q&A for that knowledge base. It's for everybody, actually. So that's the key thing. Can read determines if you have access to social Q&A or not. All right. There is some offline reading on user criteria as well. We recommend that you go through this article. This has also, overview of what user criteria is and ACLs are in Knowledge v3. There is a video as well that is very helpful. All the details that we were covering today is explained in a more use case fashion in this knowledge article. We are also in the process of creating a video for advanced use cases such as detailed migration and scripting with user criteria. That video is under production. It should be coming soon. And once we have that video published, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will be adding it to our community. Also, a link will be added to this particular webinars article that we have associated with it. All right, so that is it for today. We have a few things outlined for the next few meetings that we're going to have. The next webinar is going to be on search tips and tricks. We are also planning to do something about customizing your Knowledge V3 homepage, and we always look forward from suggestions from you to determine what the topic would be for the next webinar. We really appreciate you guys having contributed so much to the community and as well as to our Knowledge V3 product in terms of enhancement requests and such, and we hope you continue to do that. And so that's it for today. Let's look if there are any questions. Lisa, do you see any questions on the live hangout?
Currently, I don't see any in the Q&A. Do we see any on the community at this time?
No. We did get a lot of questions earlier through other blog posts and as such, which we have covered today. Hopefully, whatever we have covered is helpful. And if you do have questions when you are going through this video at a later time, you can post your questions on the community, and we will actively look forward and respond to your questions. And so we'll call it a wrap for today. We really appreciate you guys providing all the support. And if you have any questions on your Knowledge V3 migration or on user criteria specifically, please do feel free to participate in the community, and we will be actively looking forward to helping you out. Thanks again.